Let's get right to it. Today I'm answering your biggest questions, the ones that keep you searching for clarity, for breakthrough, and for a deeper connection to music. At the heart of every answer is one idea: audiation, the ability to hear music in your mind before you ever touch an instrument. That's the root of real relationship. As a professor, I spent nearly a decade researching, teaching, serving on graduate committees, mentoring PhD and master students, and writing or researching the very books others quote. I know this material inside and out. What drives me, what gets me passionate and sometimes a little bit frustrated, is seeing musicians get tangled up in these endless theory debates and academic posturing that never leads to real skill. I know what academic rigor is. I lived it, and I know when it's just noise. My method is built on what I believe actually works. If you can't hear music in your mind, all the theory in the world won't save you. So let's dive in. Every question here, these are your questions. And one of the question is, how can musicians reliably audiate two or three voices at once, instead of just hearing the general color of a progression? So, to truly audiate multiple voices, you must move beyond the haze of the chord and step into the clarity of the individual chord members. Begin with one voice. You can try singing it, feel its shape, let it become vivid in your mind. Then you add a second, but try not to let the first one blur. This is going to be difficult at first, but you want to try and keep that first voice distinct in your mind. And normally I recommend audiating first, but sometimes you have to sing to make sure that what you're audiating is correct. Eventually, what you want to do is get away from this entirely and just trust that your inner ear is correct. Because when we sing, we're using resonance, we're matching pitch, we can feel it, we can hear it in the world. We want to get better at having that same sensation internally. So, what you want to do is you want to picture each chord member as a thread in kind of a tapestry. It's distinct yet woven together. You can practice at first by singing or humming each part separately and then together. Visualize the music as sort of a conversation. Each voice has its own story, yet responding to others. This is not a gift, but a skill. Some of us have more of the gift than others, but it's a skill that can be developed. And over time, your mind's ear will separate and blend sounds at will, revealing the true richness of polyphonic music. So, what you want to do is just start with one chord tone, get that really solid in your mind, even visualize it on a staff system. I find that's helpful. And then hear a second one on top of it. And what you want to do is go back and forth. Hear the first one, hear the second one. You're kind of arpeggiating the two notes of the chord at first. And then eventually you try and hold out that bottom note. And then you hold the top note and see if you can hear both at once. Once you can do that, try and add a third one on top. And you just do this every day until it gets easier. And that's the trick here. There's no secret. You keep doing this, it will get better, and you will suddenly be able to hear very distinct chords in your mind. Question two: what are the best approaches for developing musical memory, especially for holding entire musical phrases in your mind before transcribing or composing? All right. Musical memory is kind of a garden that grows with careful tending. Start small, one phrase or even one note. Repeat it until it's familiar as your own name. Sing it, play it, and then try and recall it in silence. Yes, this is memorization, but memorization is sometimes the first step to developing more fluid, practical audiation as a tool. You want to layer complexity gradually. So once you can do an entire phrase, add a second phrase. Then try and add a third. Use visualization. Picture the notes, the movement, the emotion. Practice mental replay all the time, hearing the phrase in your mind before you attempt to write or play it. Even if you know what the notes are clearly, you want to make sure that you can play this back in your mind. Don't just play it on the piano or your instrument. Review often and test yourself in different contexts while walking, before sleep, after a break. Over time, your mind will learn to hold and recall entire musical ideas, transforming fleeting sounds into lasting knowledge. The other thing I want to talk about is chunking. We use chunking. It's when you basically take several bits of information and you group them together. So let's say you have a chord. You can chunk a chord as C, E, G. That would be a chunk. You can also isolate individual pitches and you can focus on the note C, E, and G by not chunking. So chunking is useful in practical application when you're actually trying to perform something or when you're trying to improvise. You want to chunk to better remember what's going on, but that's not how you develop memory. The way you increase your memory is by isolation. You hear C by itself. And then E is the next note in a sequence, but it's its own entity. It's not connected to C. It's C, E, G. Think of it this way. You have a phone number. You've got 7 digits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I chunked it. I said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I grouped it into two parts. That is useful for remembering it, but it doesn't build memory. It's a technique for remembering, but it doesn't build memory. So what you want to do is go 1, and then wait a moment, 2, and then see if you can remember the next piece of that puzzle, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The space in between each number that I'm giving reduces my natural tendency to chunk, and it increases the amount of information I can hold in my hand, in my mind. So, as an example, I can now chunk 7 pieces of information, whereas before I was only chunking 2. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 now becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 pieces of information, and I can add more to it. So that's why we want to focus on both. We want to focus on chunking and isolation. Our next question, how does the mirror exercise help with hearing intervals and focusing on the melody and bass? And how can this be applied to transcription? Okay, so the mirror exercise is a crucible for your inner ear. By swapping melody and bass roles, so you're singing the bass while imagining the melody, and then you reverse it. You sing the melody while imagining the bass. You force your mind to track two musical streams at once. So the mirror exercise is in my flawless course. It's basically where you have two notes and it's a way to get into the interval. You might sing C, G, C, G, and then you'll repeat it in various ways. What it does is it strengthens your ability to hold multiple lines and it sharpens your awareness of intervallic relationships. In transcription, this skill is kind of golden. You'll catch subtle movement, inner voices, and harmonic shifts that others will miss because they're going by so quickly. You'll learn to unlock these things at a faster rate. Practice by recording yourself, then listening back, and you just switch the focus. At first, maybe you focus on the top line. Then maybe you focus on a secondary line. Then you focus on the bass and try and pull each voice out. The mirror exercise sets the stage for doing this later on in a much more practical, much more expedient way. But right now, what you're doing is you're just trying to build this basic ability, and each repetition forges a clear and more versatile mind's ear. So, what are the practical benefits of the chord interval exercise that I do in my Flawless course? It's where you're hearing and singing the bottom, middle, and top notes. How does it apply to real world musicianship? So, when you can isolate and sing every note of a chord, you move from passive listening to active creation. This exercise trains you to recognize the unique color of each chord tone, making harmonies less mysterious and more actionable. In ensembles, you'll blend better, you'll tune faster, and you're better able to anticipate harmonic changes. For improvisers, it's the difference between guessing and knowing. Practice by breaking chords into individual notes, singing each one, then reconstructing the entire chord. Over time, you'll hear not just the chord, but every voice within it, which helps you unlock a deeper understanding and more expressive power. So, this is a very fundamental exercise. We work on it for a very long time in the flawless course because it unlocks the ear and it helps you start hearing inside music. And one of the things you'll start to notice as you continue with this exercise is when you listen to music that you've listened to before, you're going to start to hear things that weren't there before. That is a sign that the training is working. Because if you started doing this exercise and you couldn't hear these inner intricacies before, but then you start doing this exercise and you can, that is a sign that training is working. It's a way to let you know that, hey, this is worth my time. This is something that I should keep going with because the course goes very deep, it goes very long, and it teaches you a lot of skills that are subtle, but when we put them all together, they become very powerful. How can beginners make the reverse melody exercise less intimidating? Should they start with just 2 to 4 notes and gradually increase? This is an exercise that I teach you about in my Audiation inner ear training course, which is free here on YouTube. So you can check that out. But the answer to this is that you kind of have a mountain that you're climbing and you want to go one step at a time. You don't think about getting to the top because that's a little bit overwhelming. You take one step at a time, put one foot in front of the other. Start with 2 notes, reverse them, hear them clearly, and then add a third. Yes, you're memorizing it, but that's fine because remember, memorization is the first step towards audiation, right? So each small success builds confidence. Remember, the goal isn't speed, but clarity. If you stumble, you pause, replay the melody mentally before trying again. If you can't replay it mentally, you play it a few more times and you just practice hearing it forward in real time. Then, once you feel like you have the memory down and you have the melody memorized, you can start to reverse it. And just celebrate every bit of progress because every bit of progress is pushing you to do something that you couldn't do the day before. So every small push forward is success. It really is. And don't compare your path to others. You know, the reverse melody exercise is a mirror. It reflects both your strengths and the places you can grow. With patience, what was once intimidating will become routine. And some of you won't have any trouble with this drill at all. That's fine. So, what you should try and do is try and do a reverse memory drill with 2 voices. See if it's hard now. If that's easy, try 3. If you can do 3, don't worry about this drill. You've got some sort of innate ability to do this. You're like a Mozart, okay? And even he had significant training. He wasn't born that way. He had a father who was an accomplished musician in his own right, and he devoted all of his energy into Mozart. So, I mean, keep that in mind. We all have to start from somewhere. Does visualizing notes or using visual cues help with internalizing and reversing melodies? What strategies help musicians build confidence with longer melodies? This is a great question, and visualization is a powerful ally. Picture the notes as shapes, colors, or movements. Use your hands. Draw the melody or imagine on a staff. That's what I personally like to do. I feel that when you visualize something on a staff, you're making it practical. And the more you do it, the more clear that staff becomes. And then if you're working on a larger composition, you can start to visualize multiple staffs. I think that's very practical. For longer lines, you can break them into manageable chunks. Master each, then link them together like beads on a string. You're holding them all together. Practice singing or playing the melody forward and backward, using visual cues as anchors. And one thing you can do is you can actually draw something, but don't draw the notes if you're going to do this. Draw a shape that represents in your mind the first note in the melody, and then draw a shape that represents the second note in the melody. Try and use the same shapes for each note and see if that helps you remember it. You've got to get creative with this. You got to figure out what works for you. Each successful reversal that you do, even if it's just one note, two notes, and then three notes, it builds trust in your mind's ear and it teaches your brain that, hey, this is something I need to learn to do because I do it every day. Over time, you'll find that seeing and hearing become one seamless process. So, going a little bit further, what's the best way to progress with melodic memory exercises? Should students spend a set time each day trying to add one more note? Okay. Consistency is the heartbeat of progress. Dedicate a few minutes each day to melodic memory, adding one note at a time. Don't rush. Let your mind become comfortable with each new challenge before moving forward. Track your progress in a journal, noting what comes easily and where you struggle. If you hit a wall, step back and review. The brain learns best through gentle, repeated, and this is what people miss, novel exposure. Over weeks and months, these small efforts accumulate. They transform your memory and your music. Now, I want to focus on novel. This is why so many programs ultimately fail. If you get into a routine and you keep doing the same exercise every day, and you keep doing the same lesson every day until you master it, you're not mastering the lesson. You're getting better at a particular routine. It's a routine. It doesn't translate to the idiosyncrasies of performance. It doesn't translate to real life practical application. All you've done is gotten really good at one particular piece, which might help you a little bit in the next piece that you learn. Think of it this way: you have a composition that you're working on, you learn it, you get it under your fingers, but then you choose a new composition. Maybe what you've learned from that one composition translates a little bit to the new one, but it's not the thing that's going to help you learn it thoroughly. What's going to help you is novel stimuli every day, practicing your scales in different ways, practicing arpeggios, practicing the fundamentals of music, right? So, what we want to do is not worry about mastery. This is why in the Flawless course, when I initially created it, I created it so that the goal was to do one lesson per day. That was always the goal. If you go back and look at one of my earliest videos on it when I introduced the course, I said that. That was the goal. But then along the way, I realized I can't keep up with this. I can't keep producing one lesson every day because in my mind, I'm like, hey, I teach for 3 hours a day. It'd be easy to produce a lesson a day, but it's not actually. Creating video is much more in depth. So I ended up saying, go for perfection, even though I knew that wasn't exactly right. It was better than taking one lesson and then waiting a week or two for the next one. So it was a temporary stopgap. But what you want is you want, if you're taking the Flawless course, day one, lesson one, day two, lesson two, day three, lesson three. It's the same skills over and over again. You don't need to repeat any lessons. And this is the trick to practical application. Too many of you want to master these skills. Too many of you say, I had trouble with the quarter interval section. That's great. That's the way it's designed. You're supposed to have trouble. Even if you're only getting about 60 to 70% of a lesson, you are coming back the next day and doing it in a slightly different way. You will get better. And there is an assessment built in. At the end of every unit, you have the final exam. If you can't pass it, then you get to go through the unit again and do it all over. But this way, you're constantly getting new stimuli. Novelty. It's science backed, it's proven. We learn more from novelty than from routine. I love this question. Are there simple, practical routines musicians can use daily to improve their ear? How do you develop and refine these routines? The short answer: start and end your day with ear training. Begin with intervals. Sing, hum, or imagine them. Move on to short melodies, transcribing by ear or from memory. Listen deeply to recordings. Focus on one instrument or voice at a time. You can use apps or recordings as checkpoints, but always return to your mind's ear. You can refine your routines by tracking your progress. What's easy, what's hard, where you use clarity. You want a little bit of everything in every routine. You want something that's easy, something that's almost impossible or impossible, and something that just kind of blurs the lines between clarity and confusion. Adjust daily. Some days you focus on harmony, others on rhythm or texture. The best routines are sort of living routines that are adaptable to your needs and always rooted in audiation and not just repetition. So, with my courses, the way they're designed is to take a lot of the guesswork out because there's enough graded stimuli in there and novelty to allow you to just go week by week, day by day through these sessions. And if you were to do everything, what I would recommend is in the morning, you do the flawless course because that is sort of the stuff that really gets into your ear, will affect your performance later throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, you would do the composing hour. This is a 40-minute session. It's meditative and it's perfect for calming down and getting ready to go to sleep. And then when you go to sleep, guess what? The last thing you worked on during the day, especially if you really focused, it's the thing that your brain is probably going to focus on first. This is something I discovered when I was a student, and I did a lot of research on it, and I discovered that whatever we focus on during the day, the brain then tries to make sense of while we sleep. So that's generally my recommendation. And if you want to add one more thing, you can do the practice routines, the daily dictations that I have. So you do flawless, daily dictations, composing hour. Once you get through my dictations, you create your own. You sit there, you think of a melody, and you dictate it. That's actually the best way to really develop your ear in conjunction with these other two parts. So, flawless, dictation, composing hour, which is audiation training and memory building, if in a nutshell. What are the unexpected benefits of audiation practice? Calm, awareness, improvisation. Okay, so audiation is more than a technical skill. It's a form of mindfulness, not meditation, but mindfulness. Practicing it brings a sense of calm, anchoring you in the present moment. It sharpens your awareness, not just of music, but of your own thoughts and emotions. Improvisation becomes easier as your mind's ear guides your choices in real time. Many musicians find that audiation spills over into daily life. They notice improved focus, patience, and even emotional resilience. It's a quiet superpower. It's shaping not just how you play, but how you experience the world. I've had students in my composing hour course tell me that one of the reasons they enjoy the composing hour is because it is relaxing for them. They feel a sense of calm while doing it. It is for them, and I have a very particular term for meditation. I think that this is not meditation, but they feel like it is meditative and it centers them and they enjoy the sessions. So there are many unexpected benefits. It can reduce stress, it can calm you, it can help with your musicianship, of course, but there are other effects that will be very specific to you. I can't sit here and give you a list because everybody's going to be different. Some people get frustrated. But through that frustration, if you live through it, you'll become more adept at dealing with frustration. So there's a lot of benefits here, and they're going to be specific to you. So let me know, what are some of the benefits that you've noticed from audiation practice? When practicing audiating or hearing a phrase without your instrument, should you imagine fingerings or visualize yourself playing? This is a great question because visualization is a bridge between the mind and the body. When you imagine a phrase, picture your hands or your breath moving with the sound. It's a good technique. It's what a lot of master musicians do. This links audiation to muscle memory, making performance more fluid. But don't let the visualization replace the sound. It's kind of a nuance here. Always prioritize clarity in your mind's ear. Practice both ways. Sometimes focus on the sound alone, and then sometimes add the physical element. This dual approach strengthens both your internal hearing and your technical confidence on the instrument. And this is where ear training becomes personalized. So if you're taking my flawless course on YouTube or you're taking it through my website, I give you lots of feedback. If you ask a question, I will answer it for you, specific to what I believe is your situation. So if you're reading a comment from somebody else, that comment may help you. And if it does, great, go with it. If it resonates with you and like that answers my question, I'm going to do that too. Great, it might work for you. But if you're uncertain, you can ask me a question and I'll respond. So these courses are living courses. That's how I make them personalized because ear training is ultimately an individual experience. You can have a one size fits all when it comes to the exercises, but the way in which we make sure that it applies to as many different people as possible is through individual feedback. So I may give you advice that differs from someone else because of what your question stated and what I inferred from that question. So feel free to ask questions. That's the point of these courses. It's actually why somebody mentioned this once, but I took my courses off Udemy. It wasn't to make more money. It's not about that. It was because Udemy, when at the end of the day, it's like $2 is what I get for an 18-hour course. I can't support that in terms of my feedback time. And I want to support everybody that takes my courses. So I had to move away from that because it wasn't financially possible. So I have to do through my website or through YouTube because those are actually better sources of, financial sustenance, which allows me to sit here and respond to your questions. Without your support there, I just can't do it. So feedback's important, and trying something multiple different ways is also important. Which way is going to be more important for you is going to depend on what's easier for you. You should do both. But if one is harder than the other, focus on the one that's harder and do the one that's easier just a little bit. You don't have to do it as much. Here's a great question. Is it correct that your brain can move ahead of your fingers, hearing a note or phrase before you play it? Okay. So, yes, great musicians don't just react, they anticipate. Audiation lets you preview the music, so when your fingers or voice follow, they're guided by a clear internal map. This leads to smoother, more confident playing and fewer mistakes. Practice by pausing before you play. Hear each note in your mind, then execute. Over time, this habit becomes automatic, making your technique an extension of your mind's ear. And it takes practice. Maybe at first, if you're previewing ahead, you can only preview the next note you're going to play. So you're playing note A, note B is coming up, and you're previewing it while you're playing note A. Eventually, and this is a weird phenomenon, but eventually you can anticipate entire phrases and have kind of a mental map of the entire piece. Like, here you're going to be at this point, and here you're going to be at this point, and you have an image of the music in your mind. And this is something that, we just strive to get better at. It's not that this is something that everybody will be able to do, but it's something that everybody can strive for. And you're only competing with yourself. Don't compete with other people. Just compete with what you can do right now and try and get better. If you're always competing with yourself, you will continually improve. Common question I get: should students rely on their instrument when learning new sounds or focus on creating an inner sound by combining intervals they already audiate? Okay. The instrument is a tool, not a crutch. Use it to check your accuracy, but build new sounds internally by combining the intervals you already know and can hear well. This strengthens flexibility, musical independence, and creativity. If you always need the instrument to find a sound, so what I call hunt and peck, we've all heard that term before, you're limiting your growth. Challenge yourself to imagine first, then confirm. The more you trust your mind's ear, the more powerful and versatile you become as a musician. So the problem with interval training, where I say, what is this? Perfect fifth. What is this? Perfect fourth. What is this? Major triad. It only works if you practice it in a very particular way. If those intervals become instant, because you can have a certain result. I can play a perfect fifth and you can identify it many different ways. You could identify it from a song. You can identify it from a melody, the first two notes of a melody. You can identify it from a sensation. You can identify it by the characteristic sound. There are some ways that are faster than others. So the quick way to do this is to identify it by the characteristic sound. And that takes a little more time to hear. The problem is that what happens is a lot of people, they will do these interval training tests and they won't realize that a perfect fifth sounds a certain way. A perfect fourth sounds different. And when you learn to recognize the characteristic sound of a fifth versus a fourth, then it's much more quicker and it's much more instant. So what you want to do is you want to hear in your mind first and then say, okay, what am I hearing? Am I hearing a harmony? What are the notes in the harmony? Sing them and then try and identify them. So, okay, there's a major third and a minor third. Okay, that's a major triad. And then you go to your instrument and confirm. You always confirm, but you do it in your mind first. And if you do it this way, follow this process, the interval training becomes much more effective. All right, so what's the best way to practice hearing multiple notes or voices at once? Is improvisation and mindful awareness more effective than academic exercises? I get this every now and then. I'll get people that'll tell me, oh, this is what the research, this is what the academics say. And then people say, forget that. Just go and play, just work on your music. Just get out there, just improvise, get into it. You know, both are good. But what I recommend for practicing hearing multiple notes or voices at once, begin with two voices. If you can already hear one, start with two. Sing or hum each separately and then together. Improvise simple harmonies or counterpoints. So when two voices are moving against each other melodically. Listen for how the lines interact. Alternate between structured drills and free exploration. So mindful awareness, which is truly listening to the space between voices, reveals new details. Listen to the space. If you hear a chord, there's a space that's different between a major third and a minor third. Listen to that space. It's filled in with lots of details, lots of information. So you hear a major third, listen between those notes, try and separate them, bring them out. You know, academic exercises will provide structure, but improvisation and play cement the skill. Over time, your mind's ear will handle greater complexity, just like a conductor managing an orchestra in silence. You'll be able to start previewing things in your mind. So now we have to say, well, how do you balance just playing and mindful structured exercises for developing a great ear? Both are essential. You need that performing and just playing, and you need the structured exercises. I mean, really, you don't need to do anything you don't want to do, but if you're looking for the most efficient path forward, you need both. Structured exercises give you focus and measurable progress. Free play lets you apply and test what you've learned. It sparks creativity and even joy. Alternate between the two. Start with focused drills, then let yourself explore. If you hit a wall, return to structure. If you feel bored, chase the curiosity, the play. This dynamic balance keeps your ear sharp and your passion alive because you can get to a point where, like, oh, I'm done with these exercises. Then be done with them for a while. Try and do a maintenance exercise, something that takes you 5-7 minutes. That's what I do in the composing hour course. With almost every session in the first year, 52-week course, 52 lessons. There's really 3 times that many because there's an introduction, there is the actual 40-minute lesson, and then there's approximately a 7-minute quick lesson. That 7-minute quick lesson is because I know this is a 1-year course. People are going to get tired. So what I do is I create these short sessions they can complete when they just want to do something else, but they want to keep moving forward. You devote 7 minutes, you press play on the audio file, you're done. You did your work for the day, and you can go and play. That's the idea here. You need both, but sometimes you're going to want to do one more than the other. That's okay, but try and have a little bit of both every day. Why is it tough to remember even simple melodies or short dictations? What strategies will help students build up to multi-part dictations? Think of memory as a muscle. Early struggles are normal and expected. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Start with the shortest possible melodies. Repeat them and test yourself in different contexts. Visualize, sing, chunk, and isolate patterns when necessary, but always return to the full line. For multi-part dictations, build up one voice at a time. Layering complexity only when you're ready. Celebrate your small wins and track your progress. So over time, your mind's ear will begin to hold more and your call will become second nature. So I said something here, chunking, isolating. Talked about this earlier, but real quick, chunking is like a phone number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2 bits of information. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Isolation is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm remembering them in a string where they're separate and isolated from their other pieces of information. It's something that you want to practice to build your memory. So how do you overcome the plateau where progress in ear training seems to stall? That's really important. It just seems to stall. Plateaus are inevitable, and they're a sign you're pushing into new territory. When progress stalls, you can change your approach. Shift the routine. Try new intervals, melodies, or genres. When you're practicing, do something different. Reflect on your journey. What have you mastered? Where do you still struggle? This is really important because it lets you know that you have improved, and that can be motivating to help you keep continuing. Even if the improvements are small, they're there. You gained something by doing the work. Sometimes a break or a new challenge reignites growth. Trust the process being the work, not me, not any program you're taking, but the work that you're putting in each day. If it's constantly pushing you towards something new, even if what you're working on now maybe isn't new, eventually, if it pushes you towards something new, that is a program that will work. Let frustration be your signal to adapt and not quit. Every plateau precedes a breakthrough if you keep moving. The greatest breakthroughs happen when you've been kind of like this for a while because you're at the edge of your ability, your current ability. And it takes a lot to push past that. But then when you finally do nudge past a little bit, it increases and you start improving again. And then you'll hit another plateau. And then you'll break that plateau and you'll keep going. And it's this lifelong mastery thing. So trust the process is something that some of you have commented on. I tell you, trust the process, and you say it's hard for me to trust the process. You don't have to trust me, but trust your ability. If you're taking one of my courses and you've seen improvement, no matter how subtle, that's what I'm talking about. Trust that those results over a very long course are going to become substantial. It's a snowball effect. One little change in ability here becomes another little change in ability here and here and here. Before you know it, you have a completely different ear that you did not have when you started. And the idea here is that work, daily work that pushes you, that challenges you, That's what does it. Now, if you're taking my flawless course or composing hour and nothing's a challenge for you, then it's going to take a while before you hit something that does challenge you. But what you're doing in the meantime is building a foundation, and that foundation will help you grow. So you can be taking any course you want as long as it has progressively difficult exercises, you will get better. The question is, will you get better in the right way? So you need that audiation first approach. Everything has to go back to hearing it internally as well as externally. When you take it inside, it becomes more ingrained in your psyche. And that is what we're looking for. How do you know when you're ready to move on to more advanced ear training or audiation exercises? When you can consistently audiate, sing, or play back intervals, chords, and melodies with accuracy, and recover from mistakes quickly, you're ready to tackle deeper challenges. So this applies if you're doing this on your own. If you're like me, you don't really like taking other programs. I tried other programs. I always felt they either jumped forward too quickly or they didn't fully develop the foundational skills. And so anything that I did learn, it wasn't as effective because I felt like I still lacked this foundation. If you're doing this on your own, you want to test yourself with unfamiliar material, increase speed or complexity, and see if your mind's ear can keep up. Confidence and curiosity are your green lights. So if you feel confident in what you've been doing, you feel like you've mastered it in a way, and you're curious to go further, that's a sign that maybe you should push it. Don't rush. That's important. Mastery at each level and each stage is the surest path to lasting growth. So now, what I'm saying here, because I have to be very clear, in my course, I tell you don't worry about mastering a lesson. That's not really the goal. Novelty is a goal. So now I'm telling you mastery at each stage is the surest path to growth. Mastery at a stage, at a concept. So, for example, Unit 1 really focuses on the interval of the perfect fifth, perfect fourth, major triads. If you have mastered those, which means you can hear them in all different kinds of contexts. You can hear a perfect fifth with a drone that is dissonant to the fifth, things like this. Then you've mastered that stage. It's different than mastering a particular lesson where you go over and over again, same material, you start to memorize it, your brain starts to say, yeah, I know this, even if you don't know that you know it, your brain's memorized it. That's not mastery. That is routine, repetition, and getting better at a very particular skill. You turned a lesson into a skill, and a skill that doesn't translate because it's a locked skill. It's a skill that's dependent upon how that lesson presented it. And even if you mix up the intervals like a lot of these apps will do, they're still the same intervals. Your brain's smarter than that. It just knows that it's the same thing. What you need is frustration. You need new ideas. And that's why, just if you're creating your own course, in the flawless course, I don't really care if the audio is not perfect. You're going for a result, you're going for a stage, you're going for learning. And if you hear things in different ways, sometimes it's hard to hear, sometimes it's very clear, then you're getting training at multiple different levels. And that's going to help you more than if everything was pristine, presented in the exact same way. That is the death of progress. Routine is not going to help you. So you really want something that pushes you. So when you're creating these things, don't worry about perfection. As long as you get the result, that's what matters. Okay? So I'll talk more about that later. How do you stoke your passion for audiation? Day after day, year after year. So the question here is, how do you keep motivation high for long-term ear training? Motivation is finicky. It can ebb and flow, but purpose endures. You have to have a purpose. Why are you doing this? Not your motivation for doing it. Why? What is the result you want? What is your purpose? Why is this something you're going to take a chunk of your life every day to devote to? It's an important question. And if you decide that it's not in your purpose and that this is not something you want to waste your life on, then don't. But if it's something that you feel is very important and that you have a purpose for doing, that can get you through. You want to set clear, meaningful goals, a piece you want to play, a sound you want to master. Celebrate every milestone. You've got to celebrate no matter how small. Mix up your practice. Learn new styles, collaborate, teach others. When motivation fades, return to your why. Why are you doing this? Remember, audiation, ear training is a lifelong companion. It's not a sprint. The joy is in the journey. And if you can't enjoy the journey, if you're too impatient to get to the end, then the journey is not going to happen. You're not going to get to the end. You have to learn to appreciate each step, each small bit of progress. And this is faster in the long run. Rather than jumping from one method to another or one idea from the other and being influenced by everything that comes your way, saying, oh, there's a new method that promises ear training in 30 days. Here's a new method that says everything I know is wrong. This is how you really do it. You got to stick to a method that resonates with you and see it through to the end. That's how you get results. And it's not to say you can't practice other methods, but whatever you take on, see it through. Don't get distracted by other methods and other techniques. Because what will happen is you'll jump from one technique to the next and you'll never develop anything because every technique is going to develop things in a different way. So master one and then another. That's how you get really good at this stuff. So now we should probably talk about self-doubt or frustration. How do you handle it when ear training feels slow or impossible? First of all, if your ear training is slow, you found a good program. It's a slow burn. Ear training is not excitement, excitement, excitement. It is coming in, doing the work, getting out. It's not necessarily going to be fun every day, but it should be slow because you want to build solid pathways. You don't build deep ingrained pathways in your brain without really focusing in and taking your time to see something from multiple different angles. So everyone struggles. Doubt is the shadow cast by ambition. It's a good thing. When frustration hits, pause and reflect. What's working? What isn't? Break challenges into smaller steps and focus on progress, not perfection. And here's the thing, every program is going to have things that you feel are working and some that you feel aren't. And sometimes those things that you feel aren't working, they suddenly start working later on if the program is designed well, if you keep going, and it may be that what's not working takes several months to start working. But if the program is designed with good intention, then those things should eventually solve themselves. Share your struggles with mentors or peers. They've walked this path too. So audiation grows in the soil of persistence. Share your stories here on YouTube or on my website. Collaborate with other people. Talk about your experiences. Be critical about things that aren't yet working, but with an open mind and the realization that maybe that's exactly what you should be going through right now. And that you can't know what's going to happen in a program of, like for Flaws, for example, of this length until you finished it. And that's a lot to ask, and I know that. But you can't know the result until you've had the result. A lot of people, they go to college. They spend 4 years, 5 or 6 if you're a musician usually, and they take 2 years of ear training minimum. And they come out of that and they don't have anything to show for it. Their ear hasn't really gotten better, but they got really good at passing tests. So even in these highly structured, expensive programs that are designed to fix these problems, a lot of people don't see the results. And then they go searching for another technique. And if they're wise, they push it to the end and they stick through it if they feel like it's a program that'll work for them, and they wait to see the result until it's over. So look, every setback, every frustration is actually a lesson in disguise. Every small win is a stone in the foundation of your musicianship. So just keep going and keep an open mind that maybe the thing that is frustrating you is exactly the thing you need. So you keep going, you keep studying. How can audiation actually help with improvisation and creativity? I get this question a lot. And it makes sense, but audiation is the heart of improvisation. It lets you hear possibilities before you play, guiding your choices and shaping your voice. Practice by imagining lines, harmonies, or rhythms, then test them on your own instrument. The more you trust your inner ear, the freer and more original your improvisations become. Creativity is not chaos, it's the art of making choices, moment by moment, guided by the music you hear inside. Think of it this way: what a lot of people do, they used to use notation programs to hear the music played back. But that's not really accurate. Depending on the speed and resources of your computer might actually cut some voices out. And so you won't actually hear what it's going to sound like in real life. There's also the issue of overtones being missing and other pieces of information that aren't being displayed properly when you hear something played back through a notation program and other methods. So audiation can help because you can close your eyes and you can get to a point where you hear it in stunning detail. You can get there. And some of you already have that, and your frustration is not the ability to audiate, it's the ability to extract what you're audiating. You hear this symphony in your mind or whatever you're hearing, and you just can't extract it. That's where the ear training comes in. That's why I separate audiation and ear training into two different camps. I know it's not the definition of audiation, but what good is a definition if it doesn't help you move forward? So I have to separate audiation and ear training, because while audiation and ear training merge and they become intertwined, audiation and ear training are different skills, because you can develop audiation quickly and ear training takes a long time. Or some people, they develop ear training quickly. People with perfect pitch often develop it very quickly, but the audiation isn't there. So we can be at different levels. So we need both. And when you have both, improvisation becomes easier. It's never easy, but it becomes easier. So, what's the best way to practice audiation for rhythm and timing? Start by tapping or clapping simple rhythms. Then imagine them without moving. Hear the beat, the subdivisions, the space between notes. Layer in complexity. Hear syncopations, polyrhythms, changing meters. Practice audiating rhythms from recordings or scores. Over time, your sense of timing becomes internal, not dependent on a metronome. The best groove comes from within. And I want to say something here about audiation as I'm finishing up this Q&A for today. Audiation is hampered if you take the Edwin Gordon approach to audiation, which is that you need to know everything you're hearing. You need to know the meter, the tempo, the time, the dynamics, everything, your articulations. You need to understand what you're hearing. That is a part of a fully developed audiation ability, yes. But if you're trying to develop both at the same time at the same rate, then you're hampering your ability to hear clarity. So can I hear a real trumpet sound in my mind? Can I hear that brassy trumpet? Can I hear the mellow sound of a French horn or a euphonium or the booming sound of the tuba? Can I hear that in my mind? That is slowed down if you wait for the ear training to catch up, because for most people, the ear training is going to develop much more slowly than the audiation. And so if you're always saying, well, but I can't know what time signature I'm in, I don't know if I'm 4/4, what the rhythm is, then your audiation has to sit here and wait. And so that's why I separate them. It doesn't have to be that ear training and audiation are developed at the same time, but you want to work on both, because there's nothing more frustrating to have a student like this when you can hear everything in stunning detail, but you have no idea how to write it. So you do need both, but they don't develop at the same rate. So keep that in mind. So, how do you use audiation to learn and internalize new styles or genres? Immerse yourself in the style. Listen deeply. Sing along. Transcribe by ear. Focus on unique rhythms, harmonies, and phrasing. Audiate the sound before you play it. Imagine yourself inside the music. Try improvising or composing in the style. Use your mind's ear as a guide. The more you internalize the language, the more authentically you'll speak it, no matter the genre. How do you do it? You live it.